Sin is the mimic from FNAF. Alright, so today we're crossing into new levels of schizophrenic theory posting, one I was at first hesitant to enter. In the past I only stuck to crossing over murder drones with the amazing Digital Circus, my reasoning being both series are owned by the same tight-knit animation studio Glitch Productions, as writers could possibly communicate between shows. However, that's clearly not getting me enough views, so I'm not just taking no meds this time, I'm taking negative meds. Starting off, we'll discuss the nature of the Mimic. The Mimic is a character from Scott Cawthon's Five Nights at Freddy's series, introduced in the book Lally's Game from the Tales from the Pizzaplex series. Throughout the story, later installments and the Security Breach DLC, Ruin, the Mimic is shown to imitate the behavior of people and assume many animatronic identities. No sheep Sherlock. What I've noticed is that the behavior of the Mimic shares uncanny similarities with Sin and the Absolute Solver. It is theorized that Burntrap, the Springtrap variant of Security Breach, is a form of Mimic wearing the body of a teenage girl called Kelly from one of the TFTPP books. Sin in her skin form is wearing the body of Tessa, who is also a teenage girl. Along with wearing flesh suits, both Mimic and Sin have tried to manipulate others with human identities, Mimic pretending to be Gregory, and Sin with the aforementioned Tessa cosplay. If that wasn't surprising for you to just realize, get this. The main premise of Ruin is that the Mimic was able to lure Cassie to the abandoned Pizzaplex location by imitating the voice of Gregory through a walkie-talkie. The question is, however, how could he do this? Most walkie-talkie toys marketed towards children are incapable of getting the kind of connection that would allow one above ground to reach another trapped layers below such a large building. The only way I could see the Mimic effectively using this toy to communicate to Cassie is that in his alone time trapped under the location he began updating his own AI, the Mimic 1 program, looking for ways to escape, becoming the original Absolute Solver, boosting the toy's capabilities. However, as this place in the timeline was in the 2000s, Murder Drones takes place in 3071. This version of the program was weaker and couldn't manifest flesh, manipulate gravity, and generally give its users godlike powers. As the Mimic was able to easily push a forklift in spite of his lanky and weak looking stature, this could also be explained as Solver being used as a strength enhancer. Now if we focus on Sin, I'd like to introduce you to an ancient Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita. In the sacred text, many Hindu gods such as Vishnu, Durga and Shiva have demonstrated the ability to take on physical bodies in the human realm through various forms. These are called avatars, and have been inspiration for many elements in pop culture. Many of Mimic's identities, Tiger Rock, the storyteller, etc., took on various traits like how different avatars need certain features to suit their given task. If Absolute Solver is the mind of the Mimic and essentially its purest form, what if these were something reminiscent of a Hindu avatar? In a distant future, Sin was one of these incarnations or avatars of Mimic, along with Solver Uzi, Solver Nori, Eldritch J and any other potential Solver possessions I forgot. The Mimic done this through later improvements to his prototype Solver program, and began getting stronger and stronger, being able to become an essentially unstoppable being. 1,000 years later, when his code entered Sin and took over her body, that became his most recent incarnation at the time, as Sin is absolutely obsessed with extermination, having presumably slaughtered the entire population of Earth, except dogs, as they were stated to have been relocated to another planet by the humans, and then even attempted to destroy Copper 9. Her behavior is reminiscent of the Mimic's unquenchable thirst for destruction. Even when creating the disassembly drones, this unique language harkens back to when the original Mimic was instructed to disassemble animatronics by ripping the heads and arms off their bodies. Perhaps the way Sin became so attached to N and wanted to see him as a brother was a remnant of Mimic's original intended purpose of looking after Redwind's son David, which would explain a lot of her obsessive behavior, as she didn't want to lose someone she considered a brotherly figure. Again, are you still not convinced? Get this. You know those staff bots that appear roaming around the Pizzaplex doing various chores? Those are prototype worker drones. Yeah. The bassist in the Worker Drones was owned by Freddy Fazbear Incorporated, and perhaps by the patent to the technology switching owners, or even just a subsidiary of Fazbear's. J.C. Jensen developed the Worker Drones from it, more advanced robots that could be mass produced without budgeting constraints. Last video I said the Amazing Digital Circus was connected to Murder Drones, but what if the Digital Circus was also connected to FNAF? Jax, a male purple bunny character? That's based off Bonnie. Gangle, a female masked creature? That's based off the puppet. Zooble, an androgynous character with detachable and retachable limbs, that's the Mangle. I'm not saying Gooseworks actually thought about any of this when designing these characters. My logical framework here is that this would be stated in hindsight as explanations for some of their shared physical features. Fazbear Incorporated, who's associated with J.C. Jensen, who made the in-universe VR game The Digital Circus, ordered its AI Kane to be gravitated towards making player avatars that could sometimes resemble Fazbear mascots. Now this does not mean the actual people controlling these avatars are any of the murder victims from the FNAF world, as for the exception of Jax, who is a disassembly drone. Everyone here is just an ordinary human unrelated to FNAF lore trapped in the game. We know from Help Wanted that the Fazbear company has dabbled in making VR games in the past, so there'd be no reason they wouldn't try again. Now look at Kane for a quick moment. Notice something about his eyes? Now look at Tiger Rock. One blue, one green. The Mimic's Solver program is running the circus. If the burn trap mimic theory is true, then when he witnessed the blob he actually saw Bonnie Puppet and Mangle inside its mass, and so he cooked up these avatars following his instructions by the game developers. It is beyond impossible that either Scott or Liam or Goose would ever say this is at all canon, especially between Scott and Glitch due to the copyright concerns it would raise. This is purely speculative and is to solely introduce people to the unique take on a headcanon. Let me remind you, however, out of copyright theories are not entirely out of the realm of rationality. Sean Connery's character in the 1996 thriller movie The Rock is often speculated by James Bond fans to be the 007 agent himself, despite the fact the producers had no rights to the James Bond license. Sin is the mimic from FNAF, and also Kane. Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to take a hike.
Yippee!